Assalamualaikum, my name is AMNI from section 4 and my group members are ATHIERAH, NAJWA, Nur Saidah and Muhammad Amin FIRDAUS. The topic is study on gender differences in language under the Sociolinguistics by Jinyu and the publication date is 18 April 2014. Sociolinguistics can be defined in two angles, simplicity and complexity. In other words, the main sociolinguistic content is the study of relationship between language and society. Sociolinguists have tried to analyze various socio-cultural phenomena and explore different discourse behavior through study on the interaction and influence them. In general, the scope of sociolinguistic studies is defined based on the relationship between language and society. It can be divided into two levels, namely microcosmic sociolinguistic and microcosmic sociolinguistic. Macro refers to the sociological focus on society, while micro is from a linguistic perspective. It focuses on linguistic phenomenon. A new perspective and analysis method has used from sociolinguistics for language and interdisciplinary study. It helps us to understand nature of language better. And in my opinion, there are the differences in language used by men and women. This is because women are more polite than men when talking to others. Women use correct grammar when talking, while men didn't use correct grammar when talking to others. Also, there are differences between women's and men's speech in pronunciation, morphology, and multiple negation. On the other hand, gender refers to either two sexes, male and female, considering the fact that everyone comes from a different social, cultural, and environmental background. It is a range of characteristics differentiating femininity and masculinity which depends on context, including one's sex-based social structure like gender roles and gender identity. Women tend to be more cooperative conversationalists than men. When people wish to be cooperative, they tend to accommodate the speech of the person they are talking to, and thus their speech becomes more like their addressee. On the other hand, men tend to be less responsive to the speech of others and to their conversational needs. They might use more vernacular form to distinguish themselves from the interviewer. The vision is about the differences of each gender and different genders' way of using a certain language in their own terms.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. I'm MUSTAFA and I'm gonna talk about the summary of the article. Okay, first of all, the article begins with a discussion about language and gender. Language exists as a system of symbols in terms of abstract thinking and sense. It reveals a method and pattern to describe the objective world from another perspective, language system, and language structures. Different reflect our different perception of the world to some degree in the study of language and gender differences. Okay, next, gender differences in language are not only regarded as a linguistic phenomenon but also a social phenomenon and become the popular subject of linguistics and sociolinguistics. Linguists from all countries have made a lot of profound and significant exploration according to the gender difference of language use. Gender differences in language can be divided into absolute and relative gender differences. Sociolinguistics mostly focus on relative gender language differences. In general, the relative gender differences means men and women show significant differences in the characteristic when using same language or dialect. Gender differences are the fundamental fact of social life and human differences. Other than that, in the article, it's reflect that there is a long historical origin in the language difference phenomenon. Men and women have different status and play different roles. Thus, they have different duties and different rights. In the article, it explained about phenomena of language gender difference from the perspective of social structure, consistency, and rights. There is a direct relationship between women's phenotype and standard and the status of women. From the culture concept of any region or country, people have different recognition and expect different gender roles and behavior. Thus, in traditional concept women language is kind and polite, alignment is relatively simple, arrogant, and firm. Inherent social expectation will automatically become a powerful social stress and drive people to restrain their behavior according in their gender mood. At the same time, girls and boy expression are becoming different and the same mentality and actually cause different language effects. After doing research, linguists have found women's pronunciation are more close to British pronunciation standard. Thus, we can see women's pronunciation are more correct and concise. Women usually avoid using slang and dirty words even if they are really angry beyond endurance. Females are inclined to use more standard and synthetic structure. Some scholars think it's process to research inwardly and extend outwardly. Last but not least, the gender differences between males and females have got great attention. Enrich the research method and pattern of gender language study, combine the research and demonstration from a contradiction perspective. Every language has its established features and we should devote to eliminating negative language gender discrimination. Generally speaking, gender discrimination has regional and timeliness features. This cause gender difference is comparative and different multitudes, time, region, and all influential factors. Language is the main method of human thinking and self-expression. Thus, linguistics has close relationship with other subject. The gender language phenomenon is not only a linguistic matter. Thus, different sexual discourse style based on gender difference study also inject. Okay, next, gender differences in language are not only regarded as a linguistic phenomenon, but also a social phenomenon, and become the popular subject of linguistics and sociolinguistics. Linguists from all countries have made a lot of profound and significant exploration according to the gender difference of language use. Gender differences in language can be divided into absolute and relative gender differences. Sociolinguistics mostly focus on relative gender language differences. In general, the relative gender differences means men and women show significant differences in the characteristic when using same language or dialect. Gender differences are the fundamental fact of social life and human differences.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. I'm ATHIERAH and I will now continue the presentation on the review and analysis. Study on gender differences in language under the Sociolinguistics. Article by Jinyu, published online on 18 April 2014, is an example of how language is used differently by different genders. In the first main point, which is language and gender, the author says that the language system and language structures differ as it is based on the word recognition of the language. We could clearly see the difference between the historical era and now. During the historical era, the people will use the language more formally and appropriately. As an example, they will always talk to the elders politely as what their parents taught them because they follow their tradition. Other than that, the author also said that many linguists such as Leonard Bloomfield, McConnell Jeanette, Hess, Zhao Yuanren, and many others conclude that men and women have difference in phonology, vocabulary, grammar, and syntax options. As for that, men tend to have higher social status as they are braver than women. This is one of the reasons why men are brave to speak up as they had the privilege in speech. Combining it with the factor of age, according to the author Chen Song-chen, a Chinese linguist, had pointed out that gender and age variations are caused when using language. To make it more simple, different gender and age cause the diversity of language as they have different social status and different ways of thinking, which I think is true. It is normal practice in our society today as the upper class will always look down on the lower class. This clearly proves that when traditional social status is different, their mental state will be different. The author also states that variations of language from men and women usually occur depending on some such factors such as how they play different roles in society, how they participate in the social activity, and this point is undeniable. Some gender might stand out in certain places and some might not. As an example, in Malaysia, and I might say most people of the people in the world who hold huge roles such as presidents and ministers, most are men. They have a wide range of languages as they participate in many social activities during the growing stage. Let's have former Minister of Youth and Sport, YB Setsadi, as an example. He was really active in debate during his school time and still is now. That is one of the reasons why he had variations of language. And in conclusion, the phenomenon of language and gender as well as age factor really have important significant values towards sociolinguistics as it has been widely proven by many linguists. Next, the author also touches on the social root of language gender differences. The author said that gender differences in language phenomena are not accidental. The researchers have found its social roots. Gender differences occur as there is a long historical origin in the language different phenomenon. They have stuck to the mindset where men and women have different roles, so they have different roles and duties. The author stated that the researchers engaged in sociolinguistics explained that these differences came from the perspective of social structures, consistency, and right. Men and women have unequal status. The author also stated that the traditional concept of men outside and women inside for more than 1,000 years has dominated people, and that is one of the reasons why men are seen as dominant. Men will usually go out and earn money for the family, and women will usually stay at home, do house chores, and cook. Women are most likely to be seen as the more dominant ones as they rarely go out. Their duty is to serve their husband, take care of the kids, and house. This way of thinking hasn't changed since 1,000 years ago until now. According to the author, one of the researchers, Zimmerman, he thought that men have absolute authority in society as they are bold. Men interrupting other people's conversation with their controlling force really reflects their social power. However, the author stated that women's subordination and dependence on social status have always been in the conversation, as women tend to pay more attention in social status more than men. This is because women are actually more economical independent as they live a hard life before. Women were most likely to be treated as a slave and only played a decorated role in society back then. Even though we're in the modern era where women are at the same level as men in terms of society and social roles, they are still being discriminated against by men. As women have no recognition of status, the author stated that they feel tempted to use numerous alternatives to obtain a higher level of social activity. As an example, girls in schools tend to compete more with boys in any competition rather than compete with other girls. This really shows that the social culture influence have significant impact on a person's mentality and behavior. With that, the author explains the cultural concepts of any region and country too, where people expect different genders, role, and behavior. They have a mindset where women need to be polite and men need to be relatively simple, firm, with an arrogant attitude. With this, the gender differences phenomena in sociolinguistics are mainly caused by social structure types, cultural background, and such mentality.
Assalamualaikum. Hi, my name is Mustafa binti ARIFFIN and I will now continue the presentation. The author Jinyu had also touched on the significance of language gender difference, which are the studies and notable differences in language use among gender. While gender linguistic differences are objective, they are widespread even in societies that speak the same national language or the localized dialect. The author tried to make it clear that due to various sexual, physiological, and differences in language, it is important to see the differences in language use as well as social variables. Pronunciation, for example, is a property of language that may be changed, as well as vocabulary, grammar, and the method of communication. The difference in utterance choosing between genders, men and women, were touched by this author. It was stated that men are more fluent in competitive issues like sports, whereas women's topics are more likely to be more emotional, like relating to their personal life or their family lives. This shows that women are more emotional and open about their feelings, while men just most likely will bottle up their feelings. My personal experience with this point is that whenever I hang out with my male friends, I will most likely be confused or feel left out of their conversations as they are talking about things that I don't take note of. For example, they will most likely discuss on last night's soccer points or the Olympic scoreboard and so on. As a woman, I do not understand or relate to most things that they discuss amongst each other as women are not fluent in competitive issues in conversations. As differences of topics between language and gender were touched on this article by the author, pronunciation and intonation differences are also important aspects to be discussed. Researchers have found that women's pronunciation are closer to the British pronunciation as they pronounce the letter T and R more easily. Women also tend to try their best to learn and pronounce words more accurately and fluently. While women are more fluent in their pronunciation, men's pronunciation is undisciplined and not as fluent as the females. This is because men are not as excited or interested to show a high position in this particular aspect. This point to me is very true as I can differentiate the differences in pronunciation between my male friends and my female friends. My male friends tend to not care in terms of pronunciation and go with whatever they know or whatever they think is right. This is because they do not really think much of their profile and fluency in pronouncing certain words. This is the complete opposite of my female friends, while they take note of every little difference in pronouncing words. While pronunciation is an important aspect in the significance of different gender languages, Jinyu, the author, has also touched on the notable features in the usage of intonation between genders. The author mentioned an experiment in the Chinese Academy of Sciences to test the intonation value of the male and female gender. It was proven that the woman's intonation is higher than men's. Women use intonation changes in a sentence, which means that in one sentence, their intonation will most likely change from one to another. Female will use a more enthusiastic and euphemistic way of intonation in their communications. To prove this point further, from my personal experience, I enjoy my female lectures more than my male lecturers as their lectures are more monotone than my female lecturers. Multiple tones in my female lecturer's voice will always make me more focused as there are more variety. As for the vocabulary difference in the use of language between males and females, the author has emphasized that women show more extreme and commendatory adjectives than men. While females use a more positive degree of adverbs, men are the opposite. Men will most likely use curse words or unpleasant words like damn or shit if they are filled with anger, which most women will not. We can also see the difference in greetings. Females will use more emotional colors to salutations, while men will keep it in one direction with no bumps. A linguist named Lakoff has done some research that pointed out that women will always add tag questions at the end of almost all sentences. For example, he is sick, isn't he? This is the complete opposite of men's syntactic, as they will be more direct without any questions. For example, he is sick. shows that women give more waste and room for affirmation from other speakers while men do not, and they are more reserved and they do not give any chance for the other speaker to give out their truths. In conclusion, this article has shown and proven the differences in language use in difference of genders. Their social roots, academic background, and social status are some of the main reasons for the difference in language use. Each gender has its own way of speaking. For example, the differences in pronunciation, intonation, vocabulary, and syntactic are some of the reasons for this difference. This article has proven and emphasized that between genders, there will always be a difference in their usage of linguistics. The author has done an excellent job in highlighting and proving the article's main research topic. As a reader, it is fascinating to see how different we can be in using a certain language in our daily lives. We all have our own terms in using a particular language, and the author has definitely proven that in this article. That is all for our group. Thank you so much for lending an ear, and bye-bye.